Well, one day after the end of the 2025 season, one Cardinal player went home with hardware as it was announced Sunday night that Masyn Winn won the 100th Gold Glove in the history of the St. Louis Cardinals. Joe Roderick, Brenden Schaeffer with you here on Card Central 365, brought to you by DraftKings, where the crown is yours. And you know what? Hey, it's a good start to an offseason where, Brenden, we have no clue what is actually going to happen with the future of this team. But it's nice to know that Masyn Winn kind of got the credit he deserved for a really good defensive season.
Yeah, Masyn Winn, we have long been talking about this guy as a future Gold Glove winner. Now we can talk about him as a Gold Glove winner as he took home the hardware, as you mentioned, on Sunday night. Well-deserved. We might have had some concern about the fact that he was going up against a big-name Dodger in Mookie Betts in the same category, but I think the voters, the powers that be, they got it right with this one. Masyn Winn deserved it. We know he played through injury as well to be able to secure this award. Ideally, you get everything corrected with the knee, Joe, and I think he could be even better defensively next year. But I guess a key question coming from this moment as we embark upon a Cardinals rebuild, a retool, a transition toward the Chaim Bloom era, I'm wondering, and I think maybe some Cardinals fans are wondering too, how big of a factor, how big of a fixture can Masyn Winn be in what will hopefully be a contending era of Cardinals baseball again sooner rather than later, whether that takes a year, a couple of years, whatever it takes. I think a lot of Cardinals fans right now, Joe, are of the mindset that the team is heading in the right direction under Chaim Bloom. The leadership being installed, the infrastructure being put together. I think whether people debate how long it may take, people have confidence, it seems, right now in the direction that the Cardinals are heading. But I wonder when the time comes that this Cardinals team gets to where it's going, how big of a feature could Masyn Winn be in that, Joe? Because obviously he's unquestioned when it comes to his defense. He becomes the youngest Cardinal to win a Gold Glove award. But offensively, the full package, what is Masyn Winn? I think that's going to be an interesting question as we go along. I think in our heads, all of us kind of look at it and say, Masyn Winn's a guy that's going to be around here a long time. He's the kind of player that you look to build around. But if you look at his numbers offensively the last couple of seasons, he haven't necessarily gotten to that true breakout at the plate. He finished 2024 with a 730 OPS and actually declined a bit this past season down to a 673 OPS. So he's a below league average player at the plate this past year. Joe, what do you expect long-term from Masyn Winn, and how big of a force could he be for the Cardinals after taking home the hardware for what he does with the defense?
You know, we saw the flashes of what I think expect from him offensively back in 2024. You remember when he kind of came up in 23 and then the start of 24, he batted ninth pretty much the whole, all of 23 for a very good amount of 24. We saw him batting ninth. Then finally towards the end of the year, once it was clicking and once you realized, okay, the book's out on him, and teams should have him figured out, but he's still hitting. Let's see how he does in the top of the order. And he did all right. Then spring training 2025 rolled around and he struggled a lot down in Florida and, had to kind of work his way around the lineup before you saw him back up in that 1-2 spot towards the end of the year. And I think that's where the Cardinals expect Masyn Winn to be moving forward. That's where you expect him to be in 26. That's where you expect him to be as you do have this rebuild. So I guess the factor is, I guess when you look at that, okay, what kind of number 2 hitter do you want him to be? What kind of leadoff hitter do you want him to be? Yeah. And again, like that's something that Chaim Bloom, that's something that Cardinals front office is going to have to sit down with Masyn Winn and kind of make those adjustments for him. Do you want him to bulk up? Do you want him to be a leadoff hitter that can get you 25 home runs? Or do you just want him to be a guy that's going to work the count, a guy that's going to get a lot of singles, doubles, walk and then steal a lot of bases because you're going to put those big boppers behind him. So I don't know if we know what kind of offensive player Masyn Winn can be right now, because it's all those pieces around him that you do have to kind of figure out and put it into place to kind of realize what he's going to be. Because I do think that with an off season, he's going to be rehabbing that knee a lot
Right.
this off
Yeah.
season. Okay, how much weight can he put on the upper body? How much muscle can he put on? And can we see him become a gap to gap doubles hitter? And if he muscles up a little bit, is that something the Cardinals want with that? I don't know if we have that answer yet.
I don't think we do. And you mentioned, like, I find it interesting that you mentioned the premise as he's going to be a number 1, number 2 type of hitter. I think in 2026 that becomes evident. Like, I think that's the case. But I also think in 2026, this Cardinals team is not a contender necessarily. Like, do you trade away Brendan Donovan? Is Lars Nootbaar on the shelf to begin the season, or is he dealt as well? I think the pool of candidates when it comes to guys batting at the top of the order is rather slim. If it weren't, you probably wouldn't see Masyn Winn necessarily be somebody that, based on what he has done so far in his career, profiles very much for that. Like, looking at some of the numbers, the very first one that would jump out to me, and while I do value speed at the top of the order, and I think that would be an aspect of it that you'd lean into, would be on base percentage. And for Masyn Winn, he's got a 304 career on base percentage. That actually ticked up a little bit this past season relative to his career numbers. He was a 310 on base. But that doesn't really scream to me leadoff or number 2 guy in your batting order. Now, that's the question, though. Can Masyn Winn unlock more offensively in his profile compared to what we have seen from him? He's talked the last couple of years. It seems like going into seasons, the conversation is surrounding his weight. Not so much, I think, from a power perspective, but from the standpoint of how do you get through the rigors of a 162-game season staying healthy, right? And obviously the knee thing happens. I don't think that's relative to his weight or what he sees when he stands on the scale. I think that was just an injury, and you deal with that as it comes. But in terms of like fatiguing and in terms of being able to keep weight on throughout a season, because the way he plays the game is hard, and it's a grind at one of the most difficult positions on the diamond for a guy like him to keep weight on. And so I don't even think it's as much about his power, Joe. I think it's more just about, him being the best version of Masyn Winn and what that looks like from a weight standpoint, from a muscle standpoint, and him just as he continues to grow in the game, finding that balance. But I still harken back to plate approach. It's a good one. He's a really solid 2-strike hitter. That is an aspect of a guy batting toward the top of the order that I think the Cardinals and their fans would appreciate, being able to level up into the best version of that. Like, what does it need to look like from an on-base perspective before we can start talking about all the other ancillary aspects of what makes Masyn Winn a good candidate to be a leadoff hitter? And I'm not just talking about in 2026. I mean, the next time the Cardinals are looking to contend, is he a guy batting in the top third of that order, or does he settle in as a player that's more league average offensively, but a guy that you want to keep around for a decade plus because of his defense?
Right. And I mean, when you look at what the future of the team looks like, it's one of those, I believe Masyn Winn can be the face of this franchise. That doesn't mean he needs to go out there and put up 30 home runs, 30 stolen. He doesn't need to be a 30-30 guy when it comes to that. I think he can easily be a guy that is 6, 7, 8 in the order, where you just know, hey, that glove is going to be there and that glove's going to play each and every night. And hey, anything offensively you get from him is a huge bonus.
And that's sort of what it feels like what we've seen from him so far. But I'm asking, do you think he can level up into being a guy where he's batting 1 or 2? Forget the home runs.
Yeah.
You're very
100%.
You're a home run obsessed individual. I think Masyn Winn can hit them, but I want to
I just want one guy on the team that can hit home runs. That's all.
Sure.
I need somebody on this roster that I can look at and say, hey, that's a 30 home run guy in 2026. And right now, I mean, Ivan Herrera is that guy, but he's got to play 140 plus games for me.
And so, like, we don't need Masyn Winn to be Ivan Herrera, to your point. We don't need Masyn Winn to be Alec Burleson. We need Masyn Winn to be the best version of Masyn Winn. Let's throw out some numbers besides homers, because frankly, I think the homers will kind of come or they won't, and they'll be there in the moments where they are. It's going to be like probably more 13 to 21 home runs. Like, that's my range. I don't know what he hit this year. And again, I'm looking at this past season going, I don't want to necessarily read too much into the decline in the offensive statistics, because I think he was playing hurt. It certainly impacted him, I think, when it comes to the run game. He only had 9 stolen bases on 14 attempts. It just wasn't something that he tried to do very often. Even in 2024, he did it a little bit more, 11 for 15. But that may never be an aspect if he's got, knee issues that he's dealt with in the past and he's going to have or has had a surgery to correct it for this coming season. Maybe he's never a guy that's stealing even 20 bases. I don't know. But if it settles in to be a 15 stolen base guy,
in 2022,
let me just go ahead.
In 2022, the last full season that Masyn Winn spent in the minor leagues, 119 games that year in A ball in Peoria and AA in Springfield. Over 119 games, 550 plate appearances that year. Brendan, he had an OPS of 832 that included 36 doubles, 8 triples, 12 home runs. And that was at the age of 20 years old, his second year in the minor leagues, in minor league ball. That's what put Masyn Winn on the map, and that's what made the Cardinals, between that and what they saw of him in A ball when he was 19, and said, listen here, you want that fast track to the big leagues? You're not pitching. You were drafted as a two-way guy. You are a shortstop. You are a major league shortstop, and if you put up those offensive numbers, you will be an all-star MLB shortstop. And I think to ask this of him by, next year he'll be 24. I think asking this of him in his mid-20s is not too much to ask for if you want this guy to be the face of your franchise.
Right. And that's where I think the Cardinals are going to have to figure out. And it's not as though it's something they have to actively pursue and say, Masyn Winn, who are you? But I just wonder, I think it's going to be a talking point as we decide, as the Cardinals endeavor into how long this retool or rebuild and transition is going to take before you're back to really trying to push the envelope to contend again. You got to have a 1 through 9 that you feel pretty good about. And the Cardinals' ability to expedite, because I think that's ultimately what this is going to boil down to. Everybody's sort of resigned to 26 being what it is. 2027, there's so much uncertainty about the league at large that I don't think that's even a season that right now we're really thinking the Cardinals are going to be pushing the envelope. Everybody's kind of circling tentatively. Okay, maybe by 2028. I would argue, though, that if Masyn Winn is somebody that gets healthy and takes a step forward, not just with what he does in the field, because he's great there, but at the plate, can he be a guy that settles in for an OPS plus above 100, first of all, because he's at 91 right now for his career? It means he's been 9% below league average at the plate. I'm going to isolate what we're talking about to what he does offensively, because that's what makes you an all-star. That's what makes you a top third hitter in a contending lineup. That's what makes you a face of a franchise, frankly, Joe. And so if he can be a 115 to 120 OPS, but if he can be Brendan Donovan offensively, you know what I mean? That would go so far toward him being not only a worthy face of the Cardinals franchise as they delve back into hopefully contending in the near future. I think it also puts him on the map as being one of the most valuable players in the sport. I'm not talking about him having to be a guy who is doing the things could he hit 30? Could he OPS 900? I think if he's OPSing 750 or 765 and doing all those things he did in that minor league season, he's hitting for doubles, he's getting the stolen bases when they come, and he's pairing that with Gold Glove caliber defense. He's batting 1 or 2 for the Cardinals if he's doing those things with the 750 or better OPS. If he's on base even 330, that would make a mountain of difference compared to what we've seen so far. And that elevates the Cardinals sooner than later. That's why I think he's such a key fixture in what the kind of the bellwether of what this organization can do, because he's been hyped up as a dude. Everything is advertised defensively. If he takes the next step offensively, the Cardinals can be contending sooner than later. He can be an important piece of that, I think.
I think 750 is just way too low still.
Too low of an expectation. That's why I want to ask, because we haven't put numbers on it yet.
I think if you look at what he did, 830, he was over 830 OPS.
In the minors, though, right?
But I'm saying, though, those were the numbers, though, that he was putting up to elevate him to the big league level when he was only 21 years old. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. As he has had 2 full years now in the big leagues, and you're asking this of him to be this top of the order star of your team, I do think 750 is just that does not make me confident about an expedited rebuild that we're saying by 28 it's we're contenders. Masyn Winn needs to be needs to be one of those top stars for you that you are putting the team on his back and saying this is one of the reasons why we're contenders again in 28.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think that's accurate. There might be some middle ground here. You're saying I need an 800 OPS. Is that the number that you would say for like again, the context of the conversation is if we're talking about him being a focal point of a expedited rebuild of like, hey, we're here sooner than we thought we'd be because Masyn Winn turned into this guy. Is that 800 for the OPS?
Yes. Yeah.
And I think winning Gold Gloves with an 800 OPS, like you're talking to, I'm trying to, what would that be in terms of wins above replacement? Probably like 5 or 6 in a season, maybe more, because he was a 2.2 this year, I believe, according to Baseball Reference. And again, he was a below average hitter. If he's hitting for league average this year, it's probably 3 wins. Add a full September, that's probably 3.5 wins. Getting to an 800 OPS with all of those other things still being in play, I think that's at least, I'll give you an example. Pete Crow Armstrong, and whatever you think about him and the ups and downs, and the dude is a sterling defensive center fielder when he's paying attention to how many outs there are. And he had struggles at the plate. He wasn't perfect, but he had a 768 OPS this year, which equated to a 118 OPS plus. Now, Masyn Winn doesn't profile the same way offensively. PCA hit 31 homers, and he only had an on base of 287. He struck out a ton. Masyn Winn strikeouts, well, his strikeouts are a little higher than I thought they'd be, but still not nearly what it is for the rate of PCA. 287 OPS on base is not going to be Masyn Winn's category. He's going to be more of a 325 to 330 on base percentage if he's accomplishing what we're talking about. Because I don't think he's ever really going to slug a ton. PCA slugged 437. If Masyn Winn slugged 400 in on base of 330, 340, that's still only like I don't know, it's like a 740 OPS, which you're saying is not enough. So maybe he would need to still slug a little bit more like 420. He slugged 416 last year, Joe. So I don't think in 2024, like that's maybe a more appropriate benchmark. If he's slugging 425, he's on base, I don't know, 330, that's still only to 755 for the OPS. But my point with all of this rambling, PCA was a 6-win player for the Cubs this year, according to Baseball Reference, with just the 768 OPS. I think if you massage the numbers a little bit, more to the on base, less to the power, less strikeouts, Masyn Winn can provide that type of value at the plate, can provide what he provides in the field, be a 6 to 7 wins above replacement player, and that's the fixture. I think he can do that at 770 on the OPS. If he's 800 or above, he is an MVP candidate perennially because of his defense.
Yeah, that is, like I said, a fast track to whatever you're able, whatever kind of rebuild you're selling us for the 2028 season.
It would be. The problem right now is that he's a career 691 OPS. So bridging the gap of what Masyn Winn has been to projecting what we think he can become, adding into the fact that he's been injured, he's been banged up while producing some of these underwhelming numbers, leads me to believe that like at full health, we probably would have seen him around 710, 715 or so on OPS. The next step, and it doesn't have to, in my opinion, be as big of a leap as even an 800 OPS. If he's 750 OPS, I think that is a key to the Cardinals unlocking, getting it done quicker than otherwise expected. Other players will have to take leaps too, Joe. They'll have to obviously add pieces. But I don't think it takes anything crazy for Masyn Winn to, because of how damn good he is defensively, be one of those fixtures and to do it on a contender. Not just because they don't have another option to bat leadoff, but because he takes the next step and is that complete player that truly can catalyze this organization toward, whatever contention goals it has in the future.
Hey, baseball season is over, but college basketball starting up today. You have the NBA, NHL, football, college, and pros still going on. And the wait in Missouri is almost over. DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is coming to the Show Me State. Starting November 17th, you can create your DraftKings Sportsbook account in Missouri and get ready for launch day on December 1st. This DraftKings Sportsbook brings everything you need to elevate your game, including live in-game betting, lightning-fast payouts, and endless ways to get in on the action right from your phone. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and grab $300 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet when we go live on December 1st in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 and over. Physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Excludes customers who redeem pre-launch sign-up offer. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos.
And Brenden, this is where we kind of hand things over to the audience. I'd love to hear what people watching this have to think about Masyn Winn and what you want to see out of him. What makes him your face of the franchise moving forward? He has the Gold Glove. He now joins a long list of former Cardinal defensive players who have won Gold Gloves, the 100th Gold Glove in St. Louis Cardinal history. What do you need to see out of Masyn Winn on the offensive side now to make him that face of the franchise? Brenden, what do you want to hear from the people watching this? What do you want to see in the comments as far as what we've discussed?
Give me an OPS that Masyn Winn will have perennially, where you say, pair it with his defense, and you can go into more detail if you want. Say, I want some of that OPS to be more about his on base. Or you might say, I want it to be more power. You might say, I want his wins above replacement to go up because he's going to be a base stealer again. Like, I think we've scratched the surface of what Masyn Winn is capable of being, Joe, but I think it's such a relevant conversation to the long-term kind of journey of this organization, because he is under team control for several more years. And we are already seeing him come into his own in one key aspect of the sport. It's defense. And that's a thing the Cardinals have valued over the years under John Mozeliak, under whichever managers were here. That's always been true, that they've wanted to be solid up the middle. We'll see what it looks like under Chaim Bloom, but I can't imagine that's going to change. But we got to be real about what it's going to look like for the Cardinals to get there offensively as a 1 through 9. And if Masyn Winn gets to be a regular 760 guy as an OPS because he's on base 330, like, that goes so far into being able to say, yeah, he's either a really good number 6 hitter or he's like a capable top of the order guy as you fill in the rest of your lineup. And so I hope too, Joe, that like these are the kind of conversations we can have this offseason now that the World Series is over, now that we're looking ahead on the Cardinals' future. There's going to be a lot of day-to-day minutia. There's going to be rumors. There's going to be reports. There are going to be moves that are made. But I also think as we look into what this Cardinals team could become, what everybody wants it to become, there are going to be these types of storylines as well. So let us know in the comments, where are you on Masyn Winn? Are you going, yeah, he's been a 690 OPS. Why are we talking about the possibility of him being able to elevate to an 800 when we just haven't seen evidence of that? Maybe you think Masyn Winn's going to settle in as a 710 OPS guy, league average offensively, but maybe you're good with that because you believe that there's value in having those types of guys in the org as well. How do you view Masyn Winn long-term, Cardinals fans? I think that's something we'd love to hear from you, and we'll continue to kind of sound off and feed off of your comments for future topics as we go through this offseason together on STL Sports Central.
Yeah, now that we are into November and out of the World Series, plenty of those rumors are going to be floating out there each and every day. And here on Card Central 365, we'll keep you up to date on any of those Cardinal related, whether real or just made up by me and Brenden. We'll make sure that you have something to talk about, something to join in on the conversation each and every day. And every day we do so here on Card Central 365. It'll be brought to you by DraftKings, where the crown is yours. We'll talk to you tomorrow right here on STL Sports Central.